Hello and welcome to Handcast. I know it's not a very imaginative name, but it is at the very least on brand, so please give us that. This is the first episode in a series that myself and Robin have been putting together. The plan is that we're going to look at all of the songs on Change of Plan, go through them one by one and kind of discuss what was going on in our lives at the time, what inspired the songs, and, the recording process and anything else that kind of comes up. Thanks to those who've already sent in questions in anticipation for this. We recorded the first 4 episodes and kind of came to realise that a lot of the questions got answered organically, but there's quite a few interesting ones that I do really want to get into, but I didn't want to ruin the flow in the moment. So what we will do after we've recorded this is do a questions episode that I think will be a really good way to kind of bring you guys in, it also gives you a bit more of opportunity to ask questions as well as we're going through these episodes. So in this episode, we start by talking about why the album was called Change of Plan, what was going on beforehand, and what inspired that name. We discuss the moment that inspired Play Some Ska in a takeaway in Keighley. We also get into some discussion about what it's been like to resurrect those songs for the recent Handfest sets. Then we also have a little chat about what was going on at that time when we were touring the album for the first time. For those of you who are watching this rather than listening, I have to point out that I learned the hard way that my camera only has a 30-minute restriction on how long it can film for. The other camera, luckily, could record the whole thing. So at the 30-minute mark, you are starved of my beautiful face, and it's purely to Robin. But the audio is still there as intended, and by that point, you really have seen enough of me. So it's not a massive issue. While we have your attention, please like and subscribe to the channel. It makes a huge difference to how these things work. Also, it will keep you informed of what's coming up and the other content and the other things, because there are still many more things to come. So without any more faffing around from me, let's get into the episode, and I'll be back at the end for a little bit back. What is the definition? Is it a warm open or a cold open? What is
I believe a cold open is a cold open not prior to credits? It's not essentially a sort of a prologue. Is it like you come in with so if we had a cop show, the cold open, it'd be like, bam, it's a warehouse, you're tied up, and then this the gang's there, and then this mysterious cleaning lady turns up, but then throws off a wig and it was actually me, and I'm like, nobody move. And then the gang's like, whoa, and then there's an action sequence, and then we jump out the window and get in our Ford Capri and speed off, and then it'd be the title credits.
Yeah, okay, yes.
And then a load of fun could start, and it'd say
gotcha.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Your DI Frank trial. I'm Detective Sergeant Dave Error, and that'd be the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of housekeeping.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but notice that we have started, but you've left your coat on your chair, which looks shit.
Do you not want this?
No, move your coat. Come
Jesus
on.
Christ,
I mean, it's bad enough that you're keeping your hat on, but it is cold, so I will give you that.
For the benefit of people watching this, we are recording this inside a fridge.
Yep.
For some reason.
With a little
better, Joe? Can you see the aesthetics of the wooden chair?
Well, I just didn't want to. It looked untidy.
I might have to put that back on at some point, though. Just be aware of that.
Okay. Well, we've got other things you could wear. Merchandise.
I am not wearing this merchandise. See, I noticed the suit jacket over there.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's randomly there, but
it's my suit.
Do you keep a spare suit here just in case?
Yeah.
All right.
It's my wedding suit.
All right.
I'm not entirely sure why it's here. I had to take it out of the car for some reason. I think it was because I went to a wedding and then I used my car to get to a gig.
Right, okay. Right, that makes more sense.
Yeah, so but it just has stayed.
You didn't attend a wedding in this room, did you? Was someone really on a budget?
No, that would be.
And they were just I've booked random Hans rehearsal room. I thought you'd like that as a venue.
Right, well, yeah, so the whole point of this is to talk about some random hand stuff about Change of Plan.
I wouldn't know about that.
Wouldn't know about that. I think a good place to start is to kind of tell people why it's called Change of Plan. I don't know shall I?
If you want, yeah. Are we assuming that everyone watching this knows what Random Hand is? I guess that's why you're watching this, isn't it? I guess you'd know, wouldn't you?
I think...
If you didn't know, why would you be here?
I mean,
you're welcome, but why?
Yeah, I'm sure they would have already established in the intro and to get to this point about whether they want to talk, want to listen to Random Hand.
I'm just trying to get the context up to speed.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Change of Plan. initially we recorded this album. Well, we tried to record our version of our debut album with our friend Tim G, who we did the EP with, the first EP with, which we were all very, very happy with. Kind of captured what we were trying to do in a really incredible way.
Very exciting times.
It was great. And it was because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know anything about recording our albums. And Tim was so excited.
Many would argue we still don't. But,
yeah. But he came out, went out of his way to just kind of say, I can produce stuff. I want to make an EP for you or record you. So we just did that. And that was, had he not done that, there's no telling of when we would have recorded, in my opinion. And then because that was so good, and Tim had worked with a few other bands and made some albums, we thought, well, let's give an album a go. And for a massive myriad reasons, it didn't work out. Like it wasn't really on Tim's head entirely. We turned up on that first day of recording. I believe we broke down on the way there.
Yeah, we did.
A tyre burst.
Something along this. I mean, with that van, it could have been any number of things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's a tyre burst on the way there, and we turned up. I believe you left me and Dimmers there.
Probably.
After a very short amount of time.
At some point, I remember being really ill.
Oh, yeah. Was that you in your recording?
I don't know which point it is, but I remember during the course of those sessions, I was like really horrendously some weird stomach bug, food poisoning, awful stuff coming out of both ends, which is unspeakable.
Nice.
So, yeah.
But I think we were out of our depth a bit. We planned 4 weeks, which is a wild amount of time. And then we got into the studio, and within hours of us starting, we got a complaint from someone setting up a new business in the room upstairs or something. We went from having this 4 weeks of recording during the day every day to only being able to record at night.
Yeah.
So we without even really questioning it, we just went, okay, well, we'll record from 6 o'clock in the evening till 4 in the morning then. And then it very quickly deteriorated to the point that we were all going to be there individually. So I was there with Dimmers for the first few days, like four days or something. Then I went and left him and came back, and he was like, I don't know, he wasn't having a good time, like particularly. I did my bass stuff, and Tim had ideas about how he wanted it, like it to sound. So he made me use a plectrum instead of picking, and I don't ever use my fingers. Do you know what I mean? So that was a bit of a weird one. And then Matt recorded again without us. I think he had his 21st birthday there without us, any of us there. I seem to remember. And then I think you were probably alone and sick.
Yes.
At some point. So it was a really peculiar experience. And in that 4 weeks, we managed to not make an album. Like what we got finished was just your vocals, I think, and a bit of the trombone. Yeah.
Just to clarify, you mean there was backline?
Everything
there.
else.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't just my. It was just
the finishing point.
Just my vocals.
It's like
and
we
just
didn't
a
do
bit
anything.
of trombone.
Yeah. No. Sorry. Yeah. To be clear.
That's right.
Yeah. So we ended up with this album that we weren't happy with, and it spiraled. It spiraled out of control really, and we didn't. My memory of it at the time was we kind of went into a bit of denial about it. We weren't prepared to spend any more money because we'd spent more money than we'd ever had on anything on that at that point. So we didn't make a plan to go back and finish it. We were going on the advice of Tim that we wanted to make this well produced album stuff, but actually we probably wasn't. It wasn't the approach that we should be making. And I think we didn't. In my head, I've always said, we didn't do anything about it for a year, but it was probably more like 9-10 months. And I think then we kind of went, well, what shall we do? We should try and fix what we've got. And we approached Pete Miles, who'd released.
Before you get to that
Safe
point,
go on.
There was talk of salvaging some of it as an EP. I remember.
Yeah,
there was talk of potentially doing a thing called the 606 EP. Which is a reference to the M606.
Right, okay.
Which we would
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we would often drive down the M606, which is the main road out of Bradford, where we would often drive to get to the motorway to get to gigs elsewhere in the country. So we banded about the 606 EP idea for a little bit of time.
Right.
My challenge to you would be, do you remember what tracks we recorded?
I've got them here.
Good Lord. This is
Now, here's the thing.
He's a prepared man.
So I've got it, but there's definitely a song missing. There's definitely Snakes and Ladders is missing, because I remember us recording Snakes and Ladders and it being the most finished and me being really pleased with it. But everything else, there was issues, like the vibe wasn't right, the energy wasn't right, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that album, we re-recorded Morally Blind, we re-recorded Tear Down, and I'm sure we re-recorded Bib, but that isn't here either. I'm sure we re-recorded Bib.
What else you got on there then?
So we've got Answers, Anthropology, Cover of the Book, Danger Makes Enemies, Dynamo Penis, Death Bastard, Fury Fix, Milk, and The Tenant of Rotherwood Hall.
Okay.
So we didn't have, at that point, Play Some Ska or Scum Triumphant.
No, I do recall those being very last minute. Like I think we'd booked in with Pete.
Yeah.
And it was like literally a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
And
Wisest Man.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was also... I remember working on that in the weeks before we went to go and record with Pete.
Yeah, but those were sort of the last things to be...
Talking to Pete, we got in touch with him to see if he wanted to help us fix this record that we'd like kind of really struggled with, and he just went, "Come down, I'll record the whole thing in a week. And it'll cost you $1,000 or £1,500, which was just like, oh, okay, you think we can do that? And he went, well, you know the songs, you gig ready, you've played loads, you're going to be tight, just do it. Which is what we needed to hear. And I think knowing what he'd released at that time, I mean, he'd recorded Failsafe and Captain Everything and Howard's Alias and all that kind of stuff, that, you know, those records had real vibe and stuff. Yeah. So it seemed like the right thing to do. So we did that, you know. And then that is literally why we called it Change of Plan. It was a change of plan.
Reveal.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was one of those things. And I think at the time it was quite a ballsy thing to do, to kind of throw away that investment and that idea and that, you know, what we put into it. And I remember a few of the bands, you know, if I still talk to, you know, people about it now that bring it up, like Sam McGregor just remembers that, you know, Sam McGregor from Grown at Home, now Signature Brew, he talks about it a lot. He just says that, you know, that he wished that they'd had the kind of balls to do that when they'd made something they were unhappy with. And they couldn't believe that we just went, well, this isn't right, sod it, let's start again. And I think us doing that, if we hadn't done that, there's a strong chance this band wouldn't still be here. I think.
You reckon?
I think there's several big decisions, you know, across our history that you can see.
By the way, if I'm slow to respond to stuff, I'm just quite chilly. That's all it is. I also this quite a cold can of liquid death water, which is combined with the Tic Tac that was in my throat and made it extra cold. So I'm just slightly... I've got some stuff going on, so I apologise if I'm not quick to the...
It is cold, isn't it?
This is a bit chilly. But anyway, sorry, you were saying, yes.
What was I saying?
The end of Random Band.
Yeah, I think, you know, there are several things like that I think had we not made those decisions, we wouldn't be here. You know, I think there's a strong chance we would have... we would have... Yeah, I don't think that the album wouldn't have hit the same. It wouldn't have been as good. And we wouldn't have been happy with it. I mean, we were pretty miserable before we went and, you know, had that remake. I remember like there being bleak moments and discussions about what we were going to do.
I think the thing as well is, and I'm sure a lot of people watching might relate to this, is that when you're at that, you know, when you're in the early stages of a band, it's extremely vibrant because everything's very, very exciting because it's all just possibilities and everything's new and it's all possibilities. So we were probably, you know, I mean, you can always say in hindsight stuff sat a certain way, but I think, you know, at the time it was kind of this big, it might have felt like a bit of a be all and end all, make or break kind of moment for us, you know what I mean? This has to land in me big and, you know, kind of, you know, be the thing that like launches us and gets people to know us and stuff. So we were probably putting quite a lot of pressure on ourselves in that respect for it to be the first thing, you know. So that when that fell through, that was understandably probably felt like a massive thing because we'd put so much on it. Yeah. You know, if that makes sense. Which we might have been right to do, but I guess it's kind of like, you know,
I don't think it was uncalled for. I think it was a sensible amount of pressure.
Yeah.
And I think if we didn't care, we might not have fixed it right. You know. Yeah. I think it has served as well, that album, massively. You know. I think but yeah, I think that explains the name.
Yeah.
I think obviously then it became another change of plan when we added the EP to it, when we re-released it through Bomber Music. But beyond that, I think that's a lot of background for the album.
That's for this start there. I don't know if it's trying to think of a way to phrase this, but basically, that it was Tim G who did our EP, and did the Bar recordings, obviously, and the recordings for those album sessions. Tim unfortunately passed away a few years ago now, and is very sorely missed by a lot of people because he was a great guy, an unbelievably talented guy, fantastic producer, fantastic musician, really a lot of fun and very insightful to work with, and we learned a lot from him.
We did,
but it's just I think it's just worth saying that wherever you may be, Tim, you are missed.
Yeah, he's right. Really important to point that out, and it's exceptionally sad when a project doesn't quite go as planned, because it's there were so many ingredients, so many things at play that made that not work, and as much of that was on us not knowing what we were doing.
Well, exactly. That's it. We were young and inexperienced.
So you got to but you still have to recognise that he's did some amazing work, and
Absolutely,
he's very sorely missed.
Yeah.
But so the album, as it became, started with Play Some Ska, which initially it wasn't the opening track on the album. Oh no, actually, I think I'm talking shit. No, Scum Triumphant wasn't second. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah. So initially, Play Some Ska and Milk, I think, went into each other.
Interesting.
And my mother, upon listening to it, went, "Those tempos are too similar. You must not do that."
Was I aware of this at the time?
I'm sure you probably were.
It's a very good point. They are very similar tunes.
Yeah.
Right,
and she basically had a little go at me about the track listing.
Good on you, Maggie.
Yeah.
Too right.
So there you go.
Absolutely,
she impacted her little impact on our first album.
Right. That's good.
And probably many more, to be fair. So we started with Play Some Ska, which was a bold thing to do with a song that I don't think had even been played live at that point. Or maybe very slim.
It was very last minute. It was extremely, like I say, I remember it being the sort of... I remember us being like booked in and sorting the travel plans, or potentially getting close to that point. And then, Play Some and Scum, getting into the practice room and going through those.
Yeah. So, what do you remember about writing Play Some Ska? Because I remember you quite excitedly telling me you had this idea.
As you well know, Joe, for the benefit of the people watching, Play Some Ska has a very specific... Do I look at the camera when we're doing
you
this?
You can look at the camera whenever you like.
Hi.
Just a little quick moment.
Yeah.
How's that microphone fit in the way of the camera?
Well, I don't know if I can do this, I guess.
You don't need to do that necessarily.
All right, people are paying for the face.
I'm just going to take a second.
Okay, that's all right. How you doing? How's that? Yeah? A little side on, not like that. Bit more like that. How's that? Oh, I hope you've got to keep this in. It's like an animation moment. Yeah, cool. All right. Yes. Play some... Have you sorted? Which death are you on there?
I'm on the sparkling water.
All right. I can only have the original. I don't know what it is. I'm just...
Do you not like physics?
Are they okay on the table, by the way? I didn't know. I didn't know if it was like a product placement scenario that you wanted to avoid, or you're okay with that.
They're not sending us free cans anymore. They can fuck off.
Okay. Play Some Ska had a very specific genesis, which was we had played... so we are currently in the band's hometown of Keighley in West Yorkshire, in our practice fridge. There was at the time a venue next to the train station, which has had various names. You can tell at what point somebody was active in the Keighley scene by how they refer to that building. But we obviously knew it as CJs or Chrome.
Yeah.
Or possibly VWs if you were old enough.
I think VWs was when we started going
That's
to
when
it.
we started going
we
to it,
started playing it when it was
Was
Chrome.
it CJ?
It was Chrome when we started playing
it. Was Chrome and then became
CJs,
CJs, right. And Joe Tilston here put on a lot of gigs.
Did. With our then manager friend Jim Harris.
Yes, you did. Who were the names? I'm going off tangent here. Who were the names you had through?
We had Enter Shikari.
Enter Shikari.
And others.
And others.
Lots
of bands
that don't exist anymore.
The point is that we did many gigs there, but we played there with, who else was it? Smoke Like a Fish on that gig?
I think it was Smoke Like a Fish and Catch Kebabs or something like that.
It was a very...
it might have been Zen Baseball Bat.
Yes, quite possibly.
Sounds like those kind of bands.
Yeah, it was. But the point is, it was a very scary bill.
Yeah.
And as it was a very scary bill, there were a lot of people there who wanted to hear some ska music, which is great. I like ska music.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of ska music. And after the gig, we were over the road at Raj's, which was a local chicken eatery, which years later we would live above.
And it would set our house on
fire. There was that. There was the minor issue of a hole in our kitchen floor. But we were in there, and I overheard, there was a cluster of people, loads of people who'd been at the gig, and I overheard somebody say, basically, I'm paraphrasing, something to the effect of, someone asked how Random Hand were, what she thought, and she sort of went, oh, well, they were all right, but they should just play some ska. Like, they shouldn't do the heavy stuff. Don't like the heavy stuff, just play some ska.
Yeah.
And on the spot, probably with a bit of chicken in my mouth, I went, I'm going to write a metal song called Play Some Ska.
Yeah.
In a slightly cynical, bitter, vindictive manner.
Did you actually say it out loud, or was that just in your head?
It might have been. It was either purely in my head, or it was through a piece of chicken.
Right, you!
I'll show you! So, possibly that night, or very soon after, I did my usual sitting up till 3 a.m. on the corner of my bed with a guitar really badly forming some ska chords, as I'm not a guitarist by trade, and sort of knocked that out. It's it's a pretty simple structure, you know what I mean? If there's any sort of theory heads here, muso theory heads, Dan is the person we need present to go into this scale and that progression and chromatic this, etc., etc. But it was, it had a bit of bite, had a bit of attitude.
Yeah.
Like I say, in my head, the initial plan was to basically do a metal tune.
Yeah.
But I think there was just the King Prawn influence or that kind of thing of just wanting to do this sort of like raggery-esque sort of ska melded with the jumpy, metal-y kind of Sepultura-y-ish sort of vibe. Because I thought that'd be quite cool. And then the song is basically, like I said, that is the genesis of the song. And then the song itself is basically about having the, freedom to express yourself through any genre you choose to.
Yes.
Be it ska or otherwise.
Yes.
The sort of irony of that is, over the years, I think a lot of people have taken it at face value and think that it is about, and it's sort of, on the occasions we say to people, actually, that song is about not playing ska.
Yeah. No, it's gone over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah, it's kind of, and it's right. I mean, every time that phrase comes up in the song, it is preceded with, I grit my teeth when the closed minds say.
Yeah.
I.e., I get irked when people say, why don't you play some ska?
But people just hear, why don't you
play some ska? Exactly, yeah. Now, just as a quick, obviously, I love ska, and I'm nothing against playing ska. I love ska bands. I love going, when ska's done well, it is by far one of my favourite genres. But yeah, I think that song is a bit misinterpreted.
I suppose it's difficult, isn't it? Because as a band and as individuals, in no way do we want people not to like ska.
Yes.
But the song is a little bit about that.
Well, it's more
not like
yeah,
but
it's more just sort of saying like there's going to be a lot of ska in this.
Yeah.
But every now and then, not every now and then, quite often, the guitarist is going to step on a distortion pedal.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's definitely missed. And ironically, that song has performed incredibly well on Spotify because it is called Play Some Ska. So it is algorithmically suggested for every single ska-related playlist that is made. Yeah. So we have a song that just is added to every playlist with ska. And it's ridiculous how many it exists on. And almost definitely people are coming into it not realising what it what that's about?
Well, after this goes out, it'll probably ruin us.
No, I mean I've had numerous conversations online with people about it, and it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. People don't care. People don't care what we think about it. Yeah. They just want the chorus for themselves.
Well, I'm not. And it says for the taking.
Yeah,
that's absolutely fine. They put it out there. It's fine. Lyrically, I think it's relatively straightforward. You know what I mean? It's sort of pretty obvious when you go through it verse by verse. As if you we did that lyric book a few years ago, didn't we? Yeah. And I sort of annotated a few specific references and things of that nature. But yeah, it's basically about an open-minded approach to music and sort of allowing yourself the freedom to be into anything and allowing bands the freedom to play what they want to play.
I'm not entirely sure. Since we've recorded it, I can't think of a gig that we haven't played it.
It comes out a lot.
Scum has not been in every set. But I can't think of a time we haven't played Play Some.
Yeah. I can't remember much, so that doesn't really say much.
Well, do you have any memories about recording it?
Not really specifically in terms of, because I can't even remember. We did change the plans to a click, didn't we? Did we?
No,
we did do a click.
Ooh.
Exactly. This is going to be.
I don't think we did. No. So I think we might have done initially did it to a click, the first attempt. But what became change of plan with Pete. So what was the name of that studio? Was it called Earth Tone?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So the studio that we actually recorded the backline in was this. I think it was called Earth Tone, and I'm pretty sure it's where Howard's Alias had recorded, and maybe Failsafe had recorded as well. They'd done that. The Answer Is Never there as well. So we were really, really excited to be in this building, and we only did 2 days there on the backline, and it was this. It was like a silo, wasn't it?
It was like an oat storage
silo
building or something like that.
It was a round room, and we had, we just set up the back line and we just played it all live, and recorded it all live. So I don't recall Dimmers having a click for that. I don't think that was in our world of stuff.
I mean, I was probably upstairs having a nap at the time, so you'd know better than me.
Yeah, but then Dimmers could have done. He could have had a click in his ear we didn't know about.
It was a long time ago. No?
It was a long time ago.
So yeah, well, no, probably need to ask Dimmers really.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we did the backline there. Was it just 2 days? Was it?
I'm pretty sure it was just 2 days.
And we slept there, didn't we? It was like I remember it being like a really nice building, and then we went to the infamous Homestead.
Yeah.
In Southampton, which to anyone in a touring band at the time would probably be familiar with. Know of it was a massive house share that was sort of a bit of a known entity on the scene. So obviously Pete lived there. Adam lived there, didn't he?
Mr. Dalton did.
Mr. Adam Dalton, who was done merch. You'll have seen him at many a merch table.
Yeah,
Adam Dalton and various. A lot of bands played there. A lot of bands stayed there.
Yeah, there was. Was there a gig there while we were staying there? I'm pretty sure there was in the conservatory.
Possibly, yeah.
I remember there being a night with loads of people.
Yeah, but it was like literally like 8 or 9 rooms, wasn't it? Was it?
If not more. Nick lived there, didn't he, as well?
Yes, Nick Horn of Sonny Boom 6 fame and Howard's Alias fame before that, and King Prawn fame.
Yeah,
and probably other bands that I've forgotten. But we basically lived in. Looking back, I feel so sorry for Pete because we basically
he invited us.
We all lived in his room.
Yeah.
For about best part of a week, surely. Yeah. And I stank the place out with fried chicken.
He loved that
horrendous fried chicken addiction that I had at the time and for about 15 years afterwards.
Yeah.
But I just remember it being, exciting and fun and. Went after that. There was like a little cool pub tavern thing we went to at one point.
Yeah.
Which may or may not have had Goblin in the title. I don't know. I'm going off track here a bit.
Let's get back to the track.
Let's get back to the song, shall we? Yeah.
So I have a vague memory of of Pete getting into the vocals and stuff and saying he wanted to, encouraging me to do that backing, so it was a bit more like the Beastie Boys and stuff kind of thing, which I quite liked. I mean, it's not something we've done a lot of since.
Yeah.
But I did like, I liked his take on that.
Here's a question for you, which I guess is more in the writing phase. So the idea of on the verses, there was obviously that sort of synthed backing, which was Dimmers's idea. And I remember him saying, we were playing through it, and he was sort of saying, I can hear this thing in my head whereby there's a sort of a tone, which is, sat alongside the guitar chords changes in that verse. But we had the sampler at that point, did we? Or did we get the sampler?
We got the sampler for Anthropology, didn't we?
Yeah. Did we? So it was specific. Was it?
Because I remember like when we didn't know what samplers were, because we wrote Anthropology, and we're getting ahead of ourselves on this because Anthropology coming up. But you were doing the Siren with your voice, and I remember us going into a music shop in Manchester where you were like, "I want to buy a sampler."
I was.
Yeah, you were.
I was.
Yeah, we weren't thinking about Dimmers hitting it. We were thinking about you having one. And we were literally looking at them, and we didn't know what that meant or what we just knew that we wanted something. Yeah. But we'll get into that a bit later. But I think the.
But yeah, this is what I mean. I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember if it was a case of sort of we got the SPDS because it would just be a useful thing to have, or if there was a specific sound or part or something on a specific song where.
Well, it was kind of like we definitely got that before we recorded the album,
right?
But yeah, so we got the sampler, and I'm not sure what we initially used. I think Dimmers maybe just got. We had the laugh in for Tenant of Rotherwood Hall.
Okay,
and I think that was because that was already in the mix as well. That song was already there.
Yep.
So I think Dimmers had already got hold of a few sounds, and then. I mean, I'm saying this with confidence. I could be entirely wrong, but I'm gonna stick with it. And this is the way I am inventing it in my head. Yeah,
not the reality.
Yeah.
I mean, from the only other thing I remember from a recording point of view is the sort of, I remember enjoying doing the vocal takes, and it's sort of feeling quite natural, and it just being like a good process of doing that. The trombone, I mean, I think most producers, particularly people who sort of work with ska punk bands or whatever, will tell you that horns can be quite difficult to pin down. It's always it's a bit of a weird thing, really, because I think just having a tenor trombone can be a bit, if you don't capture it right, can be a bit dodgy, or if you don't sort of, have parts which particularly suit just the sound of that on its own. I think it works well on its own in Play Some Ska because it's basically the solo bit in the middle. And then I remember Pete having the idea of wanting to do the harmony notes on the end. So on the record, it's that ba 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 has like a harmony layered on top of it. And that, I think that was sort of like, I mean, we may have done a bit of that sort of stuff with Tim, but I remember sort of being like, ooh, layering, ooh, exciting. Ooh.
So you didn't have trumpet on that then, did you?
No, there was no trumpet. Did not come into play until Inhale.
Yeah.
Which is a different story, and we'll discuss that.
At another
we'll
time.
Discuss that in 6 months' time. Inhale, Exhale. But yeah, I remember enjoying the process of doing the vocals and trombone for that. Do you remember the decision process of putting it first on the album? What was the decision process? Where we just
I've always been the one that painstakingly got into the. Always took that stuff really seriously. The track listing, didn't I? I can't. Do you know what? I can't remember. I think it was just the fact that it hit really hard and it was catchy. And yeah, I think obviously we were all quite excited about the song because it was fresh and new and came out of nowhere. And felt like a progression in the right direction.
It's interesting. It's progression. Do you reckon there is some cynical contention with this that, online, that By a Furlong appears to be our most played song, and it is the first song on our first album? And is it fair to say we've gone downhill since the very first thing that we put out?
I know it's difficult, isn't it?
Album one onwards.
I mean, those figures are a lot to do with the
word ska,
the word ska, and a particular playlist.
Yeah,
and a Spotify ska playlist.
Yeah,
because if you look at all the bands that have got a song on that, their songs that are on that are their top songs.
Yeah,
right. So I think it's easy to go, oh, is that high up there because it's our first song? People aren't listening to the rest after it. So there is that. Yep. But I don't think that's quite what it is. I mean, the song slaps, doesn't it? And people love it. They do. Well, at our gigs, people go crazy for it. So,
well, I hope so. I hope people are having a nice time.
Yeah.
I
think performing all of Change of Plan at Handfest this year was a real secular moment. Like the fact that this album we made, 18 years ago, that we've, we don't play all of it. We play 3 songs off it, and we, in our heads, we've convinced ourselves that it's old and it's not relevant and it doesn't stand up. But it does. Though the gig performing it, everyone loved those songs, and people do talk about the album like it's a fake. And I've always been in denial about it. It's like, yeah, whatever. Like, is it though? Is it? And I think we have to give it more credit than it's due. I mean, you've always felt like it was a band trying to find their feet.
Yeah, that's very much. Because I think, I know we discussed this before, like, and you can say this about a lot of bands' first albums, obviously, is the thing with Change of Plan, it was, that collection of songs is sort of, they're almost from different fragmented time periods of the band up to that point. You know what I mean? Obviously, we had stuff before that. We had there's some, at least an albums, a couple of albums worth of stuff before that. Yeah, there's a lot of songs before that when we were finding our feet. But unlike the the later albums, which were sort of more concisely written, Change of Plan is a bit more fragmented, I think, in the writing, and I think you can hear and I think when I say that to people, their response to that in a positive way is like, that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's there's a lot of quirky ideas on that album, because you're obviously trying things out, and the result of that is this sort of interesting left field, quirky set of things. You know what I mean? I mean, it's quite funny when saying about Play Some and Scum Triumphant being the last, essentially, Wisest Man as well, but those two essentially being the last 2 songs I did, because to me they're sort of what I would now think of as much more stark examples of what Random Hands sound like. You know what I mean? To me, that's almost like sort of part of the origin story, if that makes sense. That's kind of more what I would consider the sound of Random Hand to then be from that on. Whereas prior to those 2 songs being written, it was a bit more. It wasn't quite as concise. It was a bit more all over the place, for better or for worse, however you want to think of that. But I've always been of the opinion that stuff after that was sort of felt more concisely written.
Yeah.
But like I say, a lot of people argue that that's why it's so interesting, because it's kind of there's a lot more quirky things going on.
So I suppose you feel like that's where we found our sound in the twilight of writing that album.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I suppose I totally get what you mean, and it's obviously there's a lot of stock in the reason why we play Scum and Play Some still, and Anthropology, as opposed to the other songs on the album, because we obviously do all feel that way. But those other songs on there do still fit the mold. They still fit the mold that is Random Hand. And they clearly resonate with people in the same way as current stuff. But maybe it's a little hangover from the fact that they were written for that album that didn't go right. And there's they did feel like they were from a slightly different time. Initially, I had it in my head we were going to listen to the song.
Right.
We weren't going to play the song to these people.
Right.
But me and you were going to listen to it.
Okay.
We didn't do that.
No. We've heard it before.
Yeah, I know, but I thought it might be quite
heard that song a lot.
Helpful to hear the recording and see what it brought back.
Yeah. Well, if did you want to do that?
Well, it seems a bit stupid to do it after we've talked to it for 20 minutes.
At this point, it would just be self-indulgent, wouldn't it?
On the performing side of it, it's always been in the set. It's done, Have we ever opened with it?
Yes, we have. We opened with it on the the January tour of 2008, the start of year tour that we did.
Yeah, which is pretty much
because we wrote that. We wrote an intro. Let me get this right. We wrote an intro that was something like a telephone number.
It was the Flats telephone number.
It was the Flats telephone number.
212468.
Yeah, because like da 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 da.
Yeah.
And then it went into that up riff.
Yeah.
And then stopped and went into Play Some Ska, and that was the start of the set.
Yeah.
And I can remember that. And I can't remember what I did last week.
Yeah, it was. Go. Yeah, it was. There was a phone number. That was weird.
So there is at least one tour where we opened with it. Yeah. I assume it went down all right as an opener. It's kind of a.
Well, it was all. It was quite. That was our first tour with that album, so we weren't. It was always. I don't think at that point we were confident that gigs would be always good, or there would always be a crowd there at that point. And that tour I remember being the first one where the gigs were all consistently good.
Oh yeah.
And it was like something had happened. It's like, we've had an album out for 9 months and people have been listening to it, which I think had definitely. It took us by surprise, I think, because we were always very. I don't know if humble's the right word, but we didn't ever expect anything. We were never expecting things to kind of happen quickly. So I think for that noticeable jump was big.
Well, the thing is as well, it's like you got to remember that we've this obviously isn't an unusual thing. It's sort of it's kind of. There are obviously countless other examples of this, in the scene. But the two sort of, there are certain bands who all the members will have played in bands from their mid-teens. They'll have played in a couple of bands or one band for a bit. That band will split up a couple of bands or whatever, and then they form a band, which is the band that does a lot of stuff. Whereas we're one of those bands where we were in our mid-teens when it started, so We've had that entire journey from the start of sort of being wide-eyed and like, I wonder what we can do, and not being particularly good at songwriting and not being particularly tight and proficient on our instruments, and kind of learning it together and going through it together. And it's the same unit that went through that process. So it's probably a bit more surprising, when you think back to sort of you being in me, Dad's garage when we were 17. The thought of like somebody outside of Haworth knowing, what I mean, like paying money to come and see us and like wanting to see us and buy the t-shirt, it's probably like an unbelievably alien concept. You know what I mean? It's probably like that can't possibly happen. You know what I mean? And then to go and do so that's probably where that idea of humbleness that you're talking about came from, because it's a gradual progression. You know what I mean? Because I remember being real. I remember when we first started noticing, we'll have travelled a distance to somewhere, a town, and there'll be someone who knew some of this. They'll have wanted to come and see us, and the excitement of that's like, oh my god, people know the band. How mad is that? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of.
Well, you're excited. I remember. Well, still to this day, we'll be with promoters. And we'll be talking about ticket sales, and it doesn't matter what figure they say, you're always like, oh, that's great. And I'm like, no, it's not great, Robin.
I'm just an optimist. I'm like, I'm just still amazed people want to see us, mate. I genuinely am. After 20 years, I'm amazed people want to see this? Yeah, all right. Okay, cool. Play Some Ska. It's a sort of a reggae-ish vibe-ish. I don't know if that's a very loose use of that term. It's a sort of a kind of a bouncy ska versus like a sort of an upbeat sort of raggerish kind of thing. How conscious of the style of bass playing are you when you do that? Because obviously I've been around you playing the bass a lot, and you always strike me as having a very intuitive thing of what to do. You know what I mean? You kind of have a play about, and then you sort of settle into a
100% feel.
Yeah,
and it's almost definitely not. Ooh, I'm going to do a rag a bit here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I just isn't. It's completely like, oh, there's a vibe, and I'm just going to get into the groove, and that is it, completely it. Yeah, I mean, I wish I was that kind of musician that had that. And I suppose I'm more like it now. I'm a bit more considered. But still, it's still about feel with me, you know, and most of my favourite bass players are like that, you know. I think, you know, like you think of like Captain King Prawn, that, you know, I've talked to both Barbar and Boo about it, and they are just they're bass players that want to have feel, you know. They're not necessarily trying to go off and show off and things, and just always trying to fit the pocket, I suppose, and always like service the song rather than show off. I mean, there's definitely bits on that album where I did show off, but it wasn't my aim. It was always like when there was space to do it.
Well, I mean, people often compliment the bass lines. They sort of say they're very sort of well considered, thought out, well written bass lines. I think with Placement, it's interesting because sort of what you're doing in the verses, dum 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 dum. It's interesting because it does have a sort of a raggerish feel to it, but it's also sort of got a bit of a rock drive in at the same time. You know what I mean? It's quite an interesting kind. But I guess if that's the natural feel of just what you're instinctively thinking of doing.
And I'd have been bouncing off the energy that Dimmers was bringing to it, and he was very much a rock drummer, you know, and that's almost definitely what gave us that different vibe and fed, you know, we put the Ska hat on it, but like it just fit, it was underlined by that rockier side that was going to suit us bringing out the new metal riffs and things at the time.
I think that's an interesting, if there's any band starting out watching this who are doing that kind of thing, it is important to remember that ska or anything of that nature is not just your guitar doing some offbeat clunks. You know, what your bass and drums are locking into is it sounds obvious to say, but I think some people don't realise it sometimes is equally as important to finding that groove. So bear that in mind.
Yeah.
If you are doing, that's fine. And if you're not, I'm not having a go. I'm just saying, think about it. It's fine. You know, just try to be helpful.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's episode 1. I hope you're a little bit warmer than we were making it, because this room, let me tell you, is so cold at the moment. It's much warmer today than it was that day when me and Robin were in. As I mentioned, we did 4 episodes in that day. And we started to get into some really interesting places as the episodes went on, and we really explored a lot of places. It definitely was a bit of a therapy session for both of us, revisiting that time and dissecting things that we hadn't thought about and the processes that were going on while writing those songs. So really hope you enjoyed that, and really hope that you'll stick around to see what comes next. Once again, please like and subscribe, share this around. It's only going to work if people see it. And we want to make more of these things. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.